Okay, greetings, comrades. I want to talk about some of the problems, the core problems that make the comments of Reverend Smith and Medea challenging to fully realize. Talk about what it is that is blocking the carrying through of these high ideals that the prior speakers have addressed, and to try and get into the kind of situation of spiritual cramping or paralysis that limits our ability to bring about things that I think almost everybody in this room and many people in the country think are absolutely correct and ought to be followed through on. And where I want to begin is in this way, and I want to link it to Barack Obama's election and what's happened since his election, this kind of philosophical and spiritual framework that I'm going to try to articulate. All of us are animated from birth with a desire for mutual recognition. That is, a desire to emerge out of our separateness, to come into connection with others, to have a full experience of being present to each other in a vitalizing and empowering way. It's evident in the birth of every new child, since you immediately see on the face of the child the full presence of the child's being. And of course, when that occurs, it draws you right out of yourself, and you realize, oh, yes, that's what's missing from my leveled down, despairing sadness that I carry around with me every day, is that immediate joy of recognition and of being connected to another human being. This longing for social connection and the need for the realization of social connection is what makes us social beings. We live in a social universe. We are not really individuals. So there's a social space that connects us, and it's within that we seek the kind of recognition that I'm talking about. Martin Buber described it as seeking a relationship of I and thou in relationship to other people, the great Jewish theologian. And what he means by that is seeing the other person not as a skittish glance, a surface appearance of a face and a body, but rather coming into an encounter with another person where you feel fully seen and recognized for who you are, and where you see the other person as a reflection of yourself, as an embodiment of the same beautiful energy. All of us long for that. The problem is that we exist in a world in which that desire and that longing that exists in each of us is also denied by each of us and all around us. The denial of this desire has really haunted the human race for thousands of years, the inability to fully realize this longing. And I understand our process as evolving to the point where we will be able to fully manifest this in the world and recognize one another in the way that I'm describing. But the denial of this desire is reflected in the way we pass each other with blank gazes on the street, the way that we are forced to participate with one another in an artificial milieu and an environment of surfaces in which we each play different roles during the day. I'm maybe a businessman, I'm a commuter, I'm on the bus, I'm going to... I live in a lovely neighborhood, Noe Valley, but that everybody holds up as just really one of the, if you want to live in a middle-class, upper-middle-class neighborhood, it's beautiful, it's progressive, it's got good ideals. But people who pass each other on the streets there all are manifesting a pleasant time, and yet all experience the same separateness and isolation that I'm describing. The void of not coming into connectedness with other people in an empowering and vitalizing way. So, if you turn on the TV, it's the mic in the back, I see. Okay. So, if you turn on the television manifests almost exclusively, and I even like some of these shows, a discourse of cynicism and irony. That's the dominant sound from TV is if you watch 2.5 Men, as my son has gotten into recently, or you watch House. I don't know if any of you watch these sitcoms on television. The culture that they display is one of cynicism, put down, and irony. It's often funny. Even Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, who are geniuses at this, Stephen Colbert, I think, must be carrying it to the highest possible level in his incredible sense of humor. Nonetheless, the encounter repeatedly with this kind of message is a form of distancing and flight and an ungroundedness, a lack of a depth of caring that could link us up with one another in an empowering and vitalizing way. So what I mean to be describing is the culture of solitude that we are all enveloped in, and that our socially separated world keeps reproducing over and over again. A fear of the other that we have all internalized and that we all need to struggle to overcome in order to make manifest the goodness that we're trying to speak to today, and in order to give Barack Obama the confidence that he himself must manifest that aspect of himself in the way that he is serving as a leader. So, stay with me here because I'm going to try and walk through a few steps of what I think has happened since the election. This overall environment creates a spiritual pain within everyone within the culture. The sense of separation, of performing an outer self, of watching the news when the guy comes on and says, "Earthquake in Haiti and the Giants win, back in a moment." And there's a blank facade. You can see the outside of the person's eyeballs. There's no sense of a presence of a fully supple human being manifesting himself or herself authentically. The repeated exposure to these kinds of surface relationships, born out of fear of the other and a fear of being humiliated if we manifest ourselves as we truly are, a fear that by being who we really are, we will not be confirmed and recognized by the other, but rejected by the other, leads us all to participate in this world of masks and distancing. It's a tremendous problem. It's a secret problem. It's a spiritual pain that the entire culture is suffering from. So, for the last 30 years, it has been, unfortunately, primarily the conservative voices that have spoken to this pain by offering people images of community that substitute for people's inner sense of emptiness and disconnection and lack of meaning. It's the conservatives that have put out images of family, images of God, images of the nation, that compensate, that create a substitute sense of connectedness for people who are feeling withdrawn, unhappy, and in pain, and speak to that spiritual need in a powerful way. It may be a false representation of community. It may be just a defense mechanism designed not to really realize human community, because that would mean creating a world in which we weren't ruthlessly competing with each other with insufficient resources and not caring for one another. It would mean redoing our entire society to build it on a principle of love and caring, which conservative forces are opposed to in the actual policies that they advocate. I'm sure that they aren't opposed to it necessarily in their mind if it could happen, but they have an attitude of fear and suspicion toward other people that disables them from pursuing that kind of agenda. And the key thing is that the critical thing that we've had to witness over and over again is the difficulty since the New Deal and since the 1960s of the Democratic Party and progressive forces being able to find in themselves an impassioned vision of community that could connect the policies that they're for with realizing this spiritual longing to be at a meaningful, living in a meaningful world connected to one another. Those of you in this room alive to recall Martin Luther King's speeches can know that every time you listen to him talk about civil rights or talk about the war in Vietnam or talk about the way society ought to be, the evocative power of his voice brought the particular thing that he was arguing for into the realm of what justice required, of what humanity needs to fully realize itself in the world. A powerful vision that could speak to people's underlying spiritual longing for this kind of community.